Hi, Al Ingalls here with Pressure Free Living, and today I want to talk about the yips, the twisties, stage frights, a panic attack. So in gymnastics, they call it the twisties. I've coached a couple of gymnastics students, really high level little gymnasts. In baseball, they call it the yips. And I've worked with baseball players who have some issues with performance anxiety. I'm a performing artist, and we refer to it as stage fright. But you might, in everyday life, call it a panic attack. What's really going on, and why do we have trouble with our vision, with our hearing, with all of these different senses, as well as coordination when we experience a panic attack or going into fight or flight? My expertise is on the fight or flight stress response. And when I say that, what I mean is what really happens to the body and mind when we go into a fight or flight stress response situation. It could be caused by anything, something really small, something really big. You don't have to be an athlete or performer to have this experience. You could just be doing your job and something causes you to trigger fight or flight. You could be at home with your kids and something gets you worrying. Today we have a lot of worries. We have a lot of pressures coming at us from all different sides. So you need to be vigilant and notice when you're starting to feel any sort of anxiety, any sort of fear, feeling annoyed or angry, and anytime you start to feel ashamed because you've done something that you regret. Those are emotions that prime us, just like pumping your lawnmower or your boat motor to start. They prime us to possibly trigger the fight or flight stress response. If you trigger the fight or flight stress response, one of the first things you might experience is that your eyesight is different. As a musician, when it happens to me, things get a little blurry. Also, it's difficult to hear. Instructions are hard to follow. So if you're in a situation where someone's telling you to do something, you might not catch it all and you might make some mistakes. There's a classic moment when President Obama was being at the inauguration, when he was being sworn in, where both gentlemen make mistakes, even with something that they've practiced, they've heard many times. So it's fascinating what happens to the mind and the body when we go into fight or flight. You can also become really uncoordinated. You can lose spatial sense. I was a really consummate performer. I started performing on stage at the age of 8. And I had never experienced stage fright until the age of 25. At the age of 25, I was asked to perform on someone else's recital. It was the Mozart Clarinet Quintet, for those of you who are musically inclined. And rehearsals went great. Everything was fine. I didn't expect the recital hall to be so packed. And apparently this guy was one of the most popular kids in the music school, because when we went on stage, it was standing room only. Something about the size of all those people, like there were people standing 3 deep in the back, people standing along the sides. There were so many people. I just went into a full-blown panic attack. I had performance anxiety, and it shook me up so much. That's what sent me on my quest way back in 1987 to really dig in and figure out, what is this stage fright? Why does it happen? I took myself to the University of Michigan Medical Library because we didn't have the internet. There was no internet in 1987. So I went to the medical library. I started doing research on the brain, on human performance, and I created a little kit of mental toughness tools. Because at the time, I was the first woman admitted to the orchestral conducting program at Michigan. So I'm conducting the symphony orchestra. And when this thing happened on stage, what went through my mind was, this can never happen again. I'm conducting the orchestra. I can't have a full-blown meltdown in front of the orchestra, in front of an audience. So I dug in to understand, how could I prevent fight or flight? How could I prevent the release of fight or flight stress hormones? I've been using that little mental toughness toolkit for decades. But then in my research in 2010, when I created the pressure-free method, I realized it wasn't enough for me to be calm just before getting on stage. In order for my body and mind to be optimal, I've got to be calm all day. That means from the moment I wake up until I set foot on the stage, I can't trigger fight or flight. because it can take hours for those stress hormones to dissipate out of the cells, and I'm back to my optimal self. So what I do is help people get back to their optimal self, if you were ever even there. Because when I learned this too, I thought, when was the last time I was really clean of the stress hormones? Probably age 2. But in 2010, I became clean. It took me about 8 weeks. 8 weeks of really hard work, consistent work. And suddenly I was no longer triggering fight or flight so much. That allowed my body and mind to be optimal. That allowed so many little conditions, chronic conditions, allergies, eczema, stress acne, situations with other parts of my body to heal, to go into remission, to actually heal, because I was no longer flooding my body and my mind with stress hormones so much. I could memorize music in minutes instead of months. A lot of doubt would creep in sometimes, but I would have the tools to help to stop to release it. So when you read all these articles today about what's going on at the Olympics, what's happening with elite people when they seem to crumble or be crushed by the pressure, what it really is about is fight or flight. They've triggered the stress response. That's why all of these things are happening to them. That's why their eyes look a certain way. That's why their bodies do not what they're trying to command it to do. Because our reflex is hyper when we go into fight or flight. We're supposed to violently fight or run away. So if this intrigues you, please look down below in the comment. I'll have a place where you can learn more about me and schedule a time for us to talk. I work with groups and individuals, and I really stand for the fact that this is the reason for so much of our mental chronic illness today, our physical illness, because these stress hormones are the culprit. So I hope you'll take a look. I'm Elle Ingalls with Pressure Free Living.